The forest stretched endlessly, its towering trees forming a thick green canopy that filtered the golden rays of the sun. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming flowers, a scent so rich it felt almost alive. Birds of all colors flitted between branches, their songs creating a melody that blended with the rustling leaves. Deep within this forest, where the paths twisted like ancient secrets, lay places untouched by time. Some villagers whispered that spirits lived here, watching silently from the shadows. Others believed the forest had a mind of its own, granting passage only to those it deemed worthy. Zubaida had grown up listening to these stories, but unlike the others, she was not afraid. From the moment she could walk, she had been drawn to the forest's edge, standing there for hours, watching, waiting, hoping to catch a glimpse of the magic hidden within. While the villagers warned her to stay away, she could never resist the call of the trees. Something about the forest spoke to her, not in words, but in a feeling, a quiet whisper that stirred deep inside her soul. One afternoon, as she gathered firewood near the outskirts, she heard something strange, a laugh. It was not human, yet it carried an unmistakable mischief, light and teasing, like the wind playing tricks. She turned sharply, expecting to see someone, but there was no one there. Only the trees stood still, their branches swaying gently. The laughter came again, soft but clear, echoing through the leaves. Zubaida's heart pounded with excitement. Was someone hiding? Was this another villager playing tricks on her? She took a few steps forward, scanning the trees, but the forest seemed undisturbed. The wind hummed through the leaves, birds chirped in their usual rhythm, yet something felt different. It was as if the air itself carried the laughter, playful yet knowing. She ran back to the village, breathless, her mind racing. She told her mother, then the elders, but they only exchanged glances before shaking their heads. "You must have imagined it," her mother said gently, brushing dust from Zubaida's cheek. "The forest holds many sounds," an elder added. "Sometimes the wind plays tricks." But Zubaida knew what she had heard. It was not the wind. It was something else, something real. The laughter had carried a meaning she could not understand yet, but she felt it deep in her bones. It was calling to her. That night, as she lay on her mat, staring at the thatched roof above her, she made a decision. If no one else had heard it, then she would have to find out the truth herself. She would return to the forest, and this time she would follow the laughter. The village of Njaru sat on the edge of the great forest, its mud brick huts standing like tiny islands against the vast sea of trees. For generations, the people of Njaru had lived with the forest in sight, but never dared to step too far into its depths. It was a place of mystery, a world untouched by human hands, where shadows moved without wind, and whispers floated through the trees like spirits searching for lost souls. The elders spoke of curses buried deep within the roots of the forest, stories passed down from those who had long since turned to dust. They warned of travelers who had ventured too far and never returned, of voices calling out in the night, luring the curious into endless darkness. "The trees whisper and the birds deceive," the oldest among them would say. "They call to those who listen, but their song is not for us." The villagers feared the forest, not just for what was seen, but for what was unseen. Some claimed that the trees moved when no one was looking, shifting like silent giants. Others spoke of animals with eyes that gleamed like fire, watching from the undergrowth, waiting. And then there were the stories of the laughing bird, though most dismissed them as foolish tales. Zubaida had heard these warnings her whole life. She had seen the way the adults glanced uneasily at the towering trees, how they tightened their grip on their baskets when passing too close. But none of it frightened her. She had always felt that the forest held a different kind of magic, something far older than fear. And now, after hearing the laughter that no one else could hear, she knew she had to find out why. She could not understand how an entire village could live in fear of something so beautiful. The trees were not monsters, they were alive, full of secrets and stories untold. The birds were not deceivers, they were messengers. She felt it in her bones. The forest was calling her for a reason. Yet, even as she longed to return, doubt crept into her thoughts. What if the elders were right? What if the laughter she had heard was not meant for her ears? But the more she tried to ignore it, the louder the memory became. It was not a sound she could forget, nor was it one she wanted to. The next morning, as the sun stretched its golden arms across the land, Zubaida made her choice. She would go back. She would step beyond the safety of the village and walk deeper into the forest than anyone else dared. This time, she would follow the laughter, no matter where it led her. The morning air was crisp as Zubaida slipped away from the village, her footsteps light against the dry earth. The forest loomed ahead, its towering trees stretching toward the sky like silent guardians. She hesitated for only a moment at the edge before stepping forward, the cool shade swallowing her whole. At first, everything was quiet. The distant hum of insects filled the air, the rustling leaves whispering secrets she could not yet understand. But then, as if sensing her presence, the laughter returned. Soft at first, barely more than a breath of wind, but then it grew, a playful, teasing sound that sent shivers down her spine. Zubaida's heart pounded. She wasn't imagining it. The laughter was real, and it was leading her somewhere. She moved carefully, stepping over gnarled roots and fallen branches. The deeper she went, the stranger the forest became. The trees here were taller, their trunks twisted in shapes that seemed almost deliberate. The air smelled different too, not just of damp earth, but of something else, something ancient. Then she saw the first sign. A feather, unlike any she had seen before, lay on the ground. It shimmered faintly in the dim light, shifting between colors as she turned it in her hand. It was warm, almost pulsing, as if it were alive. She pressed forward, and soon more signs appeared. Flowers that glowed softly in the shadows, their petals curling as she passed. The wind changed, carrying voices, not words, but something close. A whispering sound, almost like a song. The deeper she went, the more the forest felt awake. But with the wonder came fear. The laughter had always been distant before, but now it was close, too close. It circled around her, coming from different directions at once. It was no longer just playful. It was watching her, testing her. Zubaida hesitated. What if she had made a mistake? What if the elders had been right? She glanced back, but the path behind her was no longer clear. The trees had shifted, their branches closing in. There was no way to tell where she had come from. A part of her wanted to turn back, to run. But another part, the part that had always been drawn to the mysteries of the forest, urged her forward. She took a deep breath, clutching the shimmering feather in her hand. Whatever lay ahead, she had come too far to turn back now. The laughter called to her once more, and this time she followed. Zubaida stepped carefully through the undergrowth, her heartbeat quickening as the laughter echoed around her. It was no longer distant. It was here, just ahead. The trees parted slightly, revealing a small clearing bathed in golden light. At its center stood a twisted, ancient tree, its gnarled roots stretching like fingers over the forest floor. And perched on one of its lowest branches was the bird. It was unlike any bird she had ever seen. Its feathers shimmered like liquid bronze, reflecting the light in shifting hues of gold and deep red. Its eyes, sharp and knowing, glowed like embers, watching her with something more than simple curiosity. Zubaida felt the weight of its gaze, as if it were peering into her very thoughts. Then, to her shock, it spoke. "Ah, little wanderer, you've finally found me." Zubaida gasped, stumbling back, but the bird only chuckled, a familiar, teasing laughter that she now realized had been leading her here all along. You were the one laughing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The bird tilted its head. I laugh at many things, child, but tell me, why did you follow? Zubaida hesitated. She wasn't sure she knew the answer. Curiosity? A feeling she couldn't explain? A pull she had no choice but to obey? The bird fluffed its wings, amused. No matter, you are here now, and that means you must play my game. Before she could ask what it meant, the bird hopped down from the branch, landing gracefully on the forest floor. It bowed its head slightly, as if in mock greeting. I am Nkoko, it said, the trickster bird. Zubaida felt a chill run through her. She had heard of Nkoko in old village stories, a spirit of the forest, neither good nor evil, but always cunning. It was said that Nkoko could deceive the foolish and reward the clever. The bird's golden eyes gleamed. I have a riddle for you, little wanderer, Nkoko continued. Listen well, for only the wise may pass my test. It fluffed its feathers and spoke. I laugh at fools, but guide the wise. Solve my secret and claim your prize. The words hung in the air like mist, wrapping around her thoughts. Zubaida's mind raced. What secret was it hiding? What answer was she supposed to find? She studied the bird again, its unblinking eyes waiting, its posture patient. It was not an ordinary creature. She knew now that it held something more, something important. But was it leading her toward wisdom, or into a trap? Nkoko watched Zubaida carefully, its golden eyes filled with amusement and something else. Expectation. The laughter had faded now, replaced by a quiet intensity. The trickster bird had given her a riddle, but this was not a simple game. It was a test. Without another word, Nkoko spread its shimmering wings and took flight, weaving through the trees with effortless grace. Zubaida had no choice but to follow. The path twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the heart of the forest, where the trees grew closer together and the air felt thick with unseen energy. Then, suddenly, the bird stopped. Before her lay a wide river, its waters dark and restless. The surface rippled, though there was no wind. As she stepped closer, she heard voices, whispers, laughter, cries of warning. They came from the water itself, overlapping and tangling into an overwhelming chorus. Nkoko perched on a rock near the river's edge. Some voices will lead you astray, it said. Only one speaks the truth. Find it, or be lost in the current. Zubaida closed her eyes, trying to focus. The voices grew louder, pressing against her mind like a storm. Some urged her to turn back. Others promised rewards if she crossed. But beneath the noise, she caught something faint, a steady, quiet whisper, calm and sure. She blocked out the distractions and listened only to that voice. When she opened her eyes, the river was silent. The chaotic voices had vanished, leaving only the gentle murmur of the current. She had found the truth beneath the noise. Nkoko nodded approvingly and lifted off again, leading her forward. The forest grew darker as she walked, the light dimming until everything was bathed in deep twilight. Strange shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, moving when she wasn't looking directly at them. Then, without warning, the shadows took form. Figures emerged from the trees, people she knew, her mother, her father, the village elders. They called her name, reaching out, their faces full of warmth and familiarity. But something was wrong. Their eyes were too bright, their smiles too perfect. They were illusions. Nkoko's voice drifted from the darkness. Not everything you see is real. Find the truth, or be trapped in the lie. Zubaida took a step forward, her heart pounding. The figures pleaded with her, their voices full of love, of promises, but deep inside, she knew. She focused, looking past the illusions, searching for what didn't belong. Then, in the midst of the false images, she saw it, a single glowing feather, half hidden in the dirt. The moment she touched it, the shadows shattered like glass, leaving her standing alone in the clearing. Nkoko landed beside her, its eyes glinting with approval. The path led her to a final challenge. In a small hollow, she found a bird trapped beneath a heavy branch, its wing broken. It struggled weakly, chirping in pain. Just beyond it, she saw another path, an escape from the forest. She had a choice: save the bird and risk being trapped in the forest forever, or leave it behind and secure her own safety. And Coco's voice came again, softer this time. The hardest choices reveal who we truly are. Without hesitation, Zubaida knelt beside the injured bird, lifting the branch with all her strength. As soon as it was free, a golden light surrounded it, and in an instant, it was no longer a bird. And Coco stood before her now, in a new form, taller, radiant, powerful. The trickster bird had been testing her heart all along. The golden light surrounding Nkoko pulsed like a living heartbeat, filling the clearing with warmth. Zubaida shielded her eyes, her breath caught in her throat as the trickster bird's form shifted. Where there had been feathers, there was now skin, dark and weathered with age. The once small creature now stood before her as a tall, cloaked figure, eyes still glimmering like embers in the fading light. She took a step back, unsure of what she was seeing. Nkoko was no ordinary bird. It had never been just a bird. "You have done what no one else has in centuries," the figure said, its voice carrying both amusement and something deeper, something sorrowful. Zubaida swallowed hard. What are you?" Nkoko tilted its head, just as it had in bird form. "I was once like you, a seeker of truth, a voice that questioned what others accepted. But curiosity has a price, and I paid mine long ago." The wind stirred the trees as Nkoko raised a hand, tracing patterns in the air. The shadows shifted, forming images like echoes of the past. Zubaida saw a village much like her own, a time long before hers. People gathered in a circle, their faces grim. At the center stood a man, proud, defiant, his expression turning to one of horror as golden light enveloped him. "I was once an elder," Nkoko continued, "a guardian of wisdom, but I betrayed the trust given to me. I used the forest's magic for selfish gain, twisting its secrets for power. The spirits of this land do not forgive easily." Zubaida shivered as the vision faded. "They turned you into a bird?" Nkoko let out a soft, mirthless laugh. "A lesson, a punishment." My voice became a warning, my laughter an echo of mistakes long forgotten. People hear it, but they do not listen. They dismiss the whispers of the past, and so they repeat the same errors, again and again. The weight of the revelation settled on Zubaida's shoulders. The laughter she had followed, the sound that had called her deeper into the forest. It was not mere amusement. It was a warning, a voice crying out across time, hoping someone would finally understand. "But you listened," Nkoko said, watching her carefully. "You heard the truth hidden beneath the noise. That is why the forest allowed you to pass." Zubaida looked around, truly seeing the place for the first time. The trees were not just trees. The wind was not just wind. This place was alive with something older than words, a magic long forgotten by her people. Nkoko's eyes softened. The forest remembers, even when people do not. A question burned in Zubaida's mind. "And now that I've listened, what happens next?" Nkoko smiled, the glow around them beginning to fade. "That is for you to decide." The laughter returned, not mocking this time, but full of possibility. The magic of the forest had chosen her. What she did with its wisdom would shape the future. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying the faint echoes of Nkoko's laughter. But now Zubaida understood. It was not laughter of joy, but of remembrance. A sound filled with both amusement and sorrow, like an old song that no one truly listened to anymore. The weight of the past pressed against her as Nkoko's golden eyes met hers once more. "There is something you must know," Nkoko said, voice quieter now, almost solemn. I was not the only one cursed by this forest. There was another, a being far older, far greater than myself, a guardian of balance, now lost to time. The forest around them darkened as Nkoko's voice wove the tale. Once, the land had a protector, a spirit of the wild who kept harmony between humans and nature. It was neither human nor beast, but something beyond, a force that guided the rivers, spoke to the wind, and kept the trees alive with ancient knowledge. The forest guardian was the heart of this place, watching over all who lived within its reach. But humans, as they often did, sought more than what was given. They came with axes and fire, with hunger in their eyes and greed in their hearts. They whispered false promises to the guardian, swearing they would respect the land if only they were granted its secrets. Trusting them, the guardian shared its wisdom, only to be betrayed. They used its power, twisting nature for their own gain, Nkoko said, his voice laced with bitterness. The balance was shattered, and when the guardian tried to stop them, they turned against it. They sealed it away, locking its spirit beneath roots and stone, hoping to claim the forest for themselves. Zubaida's chest tightened as she listened. The betrayal was not just an old story, it was a warning. The very same mistakes that had doomed the guardian were being repeated, even now. The village still feared the forest, still refused to understand its magic. Nkoko's laughter echoed again, but this time Zubaida could hear the pain beneath it. I laugh because I remember how easily humans forget, how quickly they choose greed over wisdom. The guardian's cries still haunt the wind, but no one listens. No one ever listens. Zubaida's hands clenched into fists. She had thought herself a mere girl, a wanderer who had followed the call of a strange bird. But now she saw the truth. She was the first in centuries to hear, to truly understand. If the guardian is sealed away, she asked slowly, can it be freed? Nkoko studied her for a long moment before speaking. Perhaps, but it will not be easy. Restoring balance requires more than just words. It demands action, sacrifice, and the courage to stand against those who refuse to see. Zubaida took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision settle upon her shoulders. She had stepped into the forest seeking answers, but now she had a purpose. The forest had chosen her, and she would not turn away. Zubaida stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding as Nkoko's golden eyes bore into hers. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her decision. She could still hear the warnings of the village elders echoing in her mind. The trees whisper, and the birds deceive. They had always told stories of spirits that tricked humans, of creatures that lured the foolish into danger. And here she was, standing before one of them, a trickster, a bird that was not just a bird. Nkoko had told her the truth about the guardian, about the betrayal that had doomed the forest. But could she trust it? Her mind wavered. She had a choice. She could turn back, return to the safety of her village, pretend none of this had happened. No one would blame her. No one would even know. But deep inside, she already knew her answer. If she left now, nothing would change. The forest would remain cursed, the guardian forgotten, and Nkoko's laughter would continue to echo as a warning no one would ever heed. She could not walk away knowing that she had the power to make a difference. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. I will help. Nkoko's eyes flickered with something unreadable, surprise, amusement, or something deeper. Then a slow, knowing smile spread across its face. Brave choice, little wanderer. It reached out a hand, no longer a wing, but a hand that still shimmered with golden feathers, and plucked something from the air. A single feather, glowing softly, as if woven from moonlight and fire. This, Nkoko said, is my gift to you. Zubaida hesitated before reaching out. As soon as her fingers brushed the feather, a warmth spread through her, a feeling of clarity she had never known before. The forest around her seemed to sharpen, as if she were seeing it for the first time. The whispering trees, the shifting shadows. None of it was just noise. There was truth hidden beneath it all, waiting to be seen. This feather holds the power to reveal what is hidden, Nkoko explained. Illusions will crumble before your eyes. Lies will unravel like thread. But be warned, truth is not always kind. Once you see it, you cannot unsee. Zubaida curled her fingers around the feather, feeling its quiet hum against her palm. She had already made her choice. She would see the truth, no matter what it cost. Nkoko stepped back, its form beginning to shimmer, shifting between bird and human, between trickster and guide. The path ahead will not be easy, it said, amusement still lacing its tone. But you have chosen to walk it. Let us see if you are ready. The laughter returned, not mocking, but filled with expectation. The forest around her stirred. The test was only beginning. The air in the forest grew heavy, charged with an unseen force. The moment Zubaida gripped the magical feather, a shift occurred. The trees whispered louder, the wind howled like a wounded beast, and the very ground beneath her trembled. Nkoko's laughter faded. They are coming. From the darkness between the trees, shadows twisted and slithered, taking shape. Long, clawed fingers reached out, glowing eyes blinked open, and whispers filled the air, mocking, deceitful, hungry. Zubaida felt fear grip her chest, but she did not run. The feather in her hand pulsed, its warmth grounding her, reminding her why she was here. The shadow spirits had been born from the betrayal of the past, feeding on the curse that kept the guardian trapped. They would not let her undo what had been done. One of the spirits lunged toward her, its form shifting. One moment, it was a monstrous beast. The next, it wore the face of her mother. "Come home, Zubaida," it whispered. "You do not belong here." She nearly faltered, but then she remembered Nkoko's warning. Illusions will crumble before your eyes. With steady hands, she lifted the glowing feather. The moment its light touched the spirit, its disguise shattered. The face of her mother melted away, revealing a hollow, twisted creature beneath. It screeched and recoiled, hissing as the truth was exposed. The other spirits shrieked in response, their forms writhing as they lunged at her. Zubaida knew she could not fight them with strength alone. She had to outsmart them. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the feather's energy flow through her. She had passed Nkoko's trials. She had learned to listen beyond distractions, to see through deception, and to trust her heart. Now she needed all of it. When she opened her eyes, she turned the feather downward and pressed it against the earth. A ripple of golden light spread through the ground, moving like a wave through the forest. The trees groaned, their ancient voices rising in unison, and suddenly the spirits screamed. Not in attack, but in fear. The light was revealing them, pulling them from the darkness where they thrived. "You were born from a lie," Zubaida said, her voice steady. "You have no more power here." One by one, the spirits shrank away, dissolving into the light until only silence remained. The air shifted again, this time softer, lighter. Zubaida turned to Nkoko, who watched her with something like pride. And then, before her eyes, the forest itself seemed to breathe. The roots uncoiled, the earth trembled, and a new presence awakened. A figure emerged from the heart of the trees, tall, radiant, neither human nor beast. The forest guardian. The curse had been broken. Nkoko stepped forward, bowing its head. Balance is restored. Zubaida, still holding the glowing feather, realized she had changed too. She had come to the forest as a curious girl. She was leaving as something more. As the golden light of the forest settled, the transformation began. Nkoko, once a mischievous bird with knowing eyes, now stood before Zubaida in his true form, a wise elder, draped in robes woven from the very essence of the forest. His golden eyes, the same ones she had followed into the unknown, now held the weight of centuries of wisdom. The village had always whispered of spirits and tricksters, of curses and dangers lurking in the trees, but they had never known the truth. Now they would. When Zubaida returned to the village, the people gathered in awe. They had expected her to disappear, swallowed by the haunted woods like so many others. But here she was, standing tall, her presence carrying the weight of something unseen, but deeply felt. With Nkoko by her side, she told them everything. The truth of the forest, of the betrayal that had cursed it, of the guardian who had once protected them all. She spoke of the shadow spirits, the illusions that had kept them in fear, and of how balance had finally been restored. At first, there was silence. The village elders, the same ones who had always warned her to stay away from the forest, exchanged uncertain glances. Could it really be true? Then, the trees themselves seemed to answer. The once darkened edges of the forest shimmered with light. The wind that had always carried warnings now whispered gently, welcoming. The people felt it, deep in their bones, the change, the awakening. Slowly, they stepped forward. The children, no longer afraid, ran toward the trees, laughing. The hunters bowed their heads in respect. Even the oldest among them, those who had clung most tightly to the old fears, placed their hands on the earth and wept for the wisdom they had lost. Nkoko placed a hand on Zubaida's shoulder. They see now because you saw first. She had always been the one who listened, the one who questioned, the one who followed the laughter instead of fearing it. And now, the village would remember. The forest would no longer be a place of fear, but of learning, of protection, of balance. And Zubaida, she had found her path. As the new guardian of wisdom, she would guide them, ensuring they never forgot the lessons the forest had taught her. As she turned toward the trees one last time, the wind picked up, swirling around her. And then, a laugh. Soft, knowing, drifting through the leaves. She smiled. Was it Nkoko, watching over her? Or was it simply the wind, carrying echoes of the past? Maybe it didn't matter. She had listened once, and it had changed everything. Now, it was the village's turn to listen.